You're listening to the Teach Better Talk podcast featuring expert educators eager to share progressive tactics to reach more students. Teach Better Talk is created by teachers and fueled by passion. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 255 of Teach Better Talk podcast. My name is Ray Hewer, and as always, I'm with Jeff Gargis because he decided to show up for this episode. So let's get to it. Jeff, how you feeling?
I'm good. That's a lot of episodes.
255.
Yeah.
Absolutely it is.
That's a lot of episodes.
Yeah.
It's like more than 250.
You're right. It's actually 5 more than that. Yes.
Yeah, give or take. Yeah.
Give or take.
That's a lot of episodes when you think about it. Because we're coming up, we're approaching, we're not quite there, but we're almost to 3 years, right?
3 years doing the podcast.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say we're almost to 300, and I was going to be like, yeah, we are almost to 300. Not quite,
no,
but maybe.
We're almost 3. I think it was about 3 years ago around this time where you and I brought the idea.
Yep.
And then eventually moved forward, but it'll be into August. Will be 3 years. That's crazy.
So
do you think we'll make it?
Do you think that this will be like our last episode? Are we we're done, right? This is it?
Is that what you want to do? Do you want to just end it?
Well, this was a pretty good episode. This would be a good one to end on.
Yeah, we can just call it quits. We're supposed to record with someone else right after this, but.
And I was going to say, yeah, we do have a lot of incredible educators booked.
We should probably do a few more.
The next few months. Maybe we'll just do a few more.
We'll do a few more.
Hey, if you're listening right now and you think it's about done and we should close this up and wrap this up, just let us know and we'll keep it in mind because we do have people booked through May. So maybe let's finish up those recordings. I don't know.
Yeah. Speaking of the podcast and recording, while you were out doing whatever you were doing when you were out.
Having surgery, no big
whatever.
deal.
Yeah, when you were having your surgery, quote unquote, whatever, vacation time.
I faked it. It's fine.
When you were faking your surgery, I did a really fun bonus episode with Dave Schmittou and Caitlin Giordano.
Do you want to know how I knew that?
How do you know that?
Because everyone on the stinking planet was talking about how great the episode was, and I was like, wait, they did an episode without me?
Well, because we wanted to fill in some episodes because we just wanted to be able to record. And we've been talking about this focus on the focus stuff coming up with Dave and Caitlin, and everyone's pumped about that. And David said something about maybe doing some sort of podcast, and I'm like, oh, this works out perfectly.
It does.
Let's do a bonus episode. I'll just ask you guys questions. We'll get in there and we'll be good. And it ended up being a really good conversation. I want to do more with them. I want to bring you in, but just have open dialogue conversation because I really enjoy just getting into it. And it really sets up this whole everything that we got kicking off with Dave and Caitlin. You're doing this, so you have something to say.
I do have something to say. I was just going to say, I thought something really cool. We have podcast listeners that listen on their way to work or, are listening when they get ready in the morning, maybe during a workout. I was really excited. I got a lot of messages of people who were sharing this podcast episode, the one with Dave and Caitlin, to do kind of a talk around with their staff, a professional development.
Yeah.
It's not like a book talk. It's like a podcast talk. Yeah. And I felt like that was a really great idea. The episode was reasonable in length and it allows, everybody to kind of listen and consume on their own time. But then setting up, whether it be a colleague that you're talking to or maybe just a group of educators to say, hey, how do we feel about this? Do we agree? Do we disagree? Yeah. And I loved seeing an episode spark discussion. I think that's the whole point of what we do in education is this teach better mindset of a little bit better today than we were yesterday. And I was excited when I saw that, and I thought the episode was so stellar. I was so glad that you guys did that.
Which side note, that's a really great thing. I actually do that with a mastermind that I run with some with business owners where we do a book study, but every week, but it's with a podcast episode because it's shorter, easier to do. You can do it in a week, without. Yeah. I mean, you can read a book in a week, obviously too, but
I can't.
We were all just we're too lazy to read a book. But it's shorter and sweeter, so you can still get into it and some really great discussions. So with that said, we do have this. We just started talking about this focus on a focus that's coming, featuring Dave and Caitlin. So that's when does that even kick off? I know you have the dates. I should, but I don't.
No, I do. I have it in front of me. So
the focus on here.
For those of you who have probably heard about this because the promotion's been crazy the last week or so, but the Focus on the Focus live series is a 5-part live series with Dave and Caitlin talking about grading, assessment, and feedback. And to be honest, Jeff, this was sparked off of great discussion we had during our 12-hour live back in December, where we just kind of let them talk shop. And I think it resonated with a lot of people because it's talking about topics that we as educators care about right now. How are we grading? Why are we grading? What does assessment look like? How are we using it? And so starting on April 7th and then every Wednesday following at 7 p.m. Eastern, Dave and Caitlin are going to be facilitating a live series. And so when you pop on, every single session has a little bit of a theme, so you kind of know what you're going to get. But they're moving into grades, what are we talking here? Or measuring what matters, or jumping through zeros and deadlines, formative versus summative assessments. And what I really love is they're going to be taking questions live on camera. So you're not only going to be hearing dialogue and hopefully getting challenged with different ideas. I know Dave and Caitlin have a lot of surprises planned for these sessions. But in addition to that, as things spark, you should choose to be an active participant in this live series by commenting and liking and sharing and discussing these topics with your colleagues. So I think they're going to do some really, really cool stuff. And any Dave and Caitlin time is good time. So
that's true. And you're right. And that's, and you said it kind of got sparked from the 12-hour live, and it was just such a highly talked about. And they're just so good, I think, together because they're both brilliant. But they also both know and show that they don't believe they know everything. They just know that they have passions, but they're willing to argue it out or talk through it and either change their minds or adjust the way they look and just trying to find the best way to be better. And I think that's what I really enjoy having conversations with them on.
I do to tell you, Jeff, that's kind of the PD I'm drawn to. I'm drawn to not only learning from somebody I consider an educational expert, right? It's always fun to learn from those people.
Sure.
But I also like to see and learn from an expert that is willing to also be a learner when questions come up, when the world shifts, when things, hurdles come our way. And I love that individually, Dave and Caitlin, I would consider a grading, assessment, feedback expert. I mean, Dave Schmittou, his most recent book, was on this very topic. And yet every single conversation, you can see different analogies being used. They're having different dialogue, and they've slowly built on their previous conversation. And it's all rooted in best practice, but ensured that it's supported for the students more than anything else. And so I'm a huge fan of them together, and I'm so excited for this live series to kick off on the 7th of April and happen every single Wednesday through mid-May.
Best place to find out that information, right? Just following us on social media, I assume?
Yeah, actually, there's a few different ways, Jeff, and I'm excited maybe we could throw this in here. We just created a Teach Better events calendar.
Yes,
and so
we did.
If you're an educator who loves to keep up to date on what's going on with the Teach Better team, like live sessions we do, or if you want a reminder of the admin mastermind, or if you don't know that we just announced a 12-hour live series we're doing on April 24th and you want it on your calendar, if you guys go to teachbetter.com/events calendar, it will redirect you to a Google Calendar that has a lot of Teach Better events on it, so you can make every single thing work and at least get those reminders. And Dave and Caitlin's series will be on there, and that way you'll have the reminder for the 7th all the way through mid-May.
Love it. It's awesome. Yep. All right, so let's get into this episode. Chad, this was a fun one. So this is a guy that I saw on a billion news channels and articles and stuff, and I reached out because I saw pictures of him and his Humvee on a computer doing a video class with his students while he was at the Capitol as part of his duties with the National Guard. So I reached out. He was super quick to get back and was like, let's come in and let's do this. And he did not disappoint. So Dr. Jacob Kohut, or Sergeant Jacob Kohut, depending on the time of the day or where he is he's a band director, band teacher. He teaches 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. He's a composer. He's a performing musician. He's incredibly passionate about music and composition and stuff, which is really exciting. But also just a very passionate educator, speaker, presenter, trainer. This was a really good conversation. I really enjoyed just talking through what he's been doing, his His failure was a fun story. His advice I thought was spot on. He's just a good guy doing good things, and I'm super excited for everyone to listen. Anything you want us to pull out?
I'm a huge fan. I really love his passion and his demeanor in trying to support students regardless of what's going on in the world. So definitely connect with him, and I'm excited for you guys to hear all of his insight.
All right, with that, let's get to episode 255 with Dr. Jacob Kohut. Hey, what's up, podcast? It's Jeff. Don't worry, I'm going to get you right back in the episode. But first, I want to introduce you to our Comeback Better packages. COVID-19 and the coronavirus pandemic has really changed so much about how we live our lives, how we socialize, and especially how we run our schools and classrooms. As we begin to look towards the next school year, things are going to be different. But we can be better because of it. That's where our Comeback Better packages come in. These have been strategically designed to support you and your staff as you prepare for or manage things like preparing a growth mindset, preparing to close the learning gaps created by COVID-19 and school closures, restructuring curriculum alignment, continuing creating safe environments for dialogue and reflection, supporting an in-person or virtual or hybrid learning environment, and supporting staff and students whose socioeconomic status has changed due to COVID-19. We are here for you. These packages are 100% customizable to fit your staff, your students, your community, and your needs. Find out more at teachbetter.com/comebackbetter. Let's get back to the episode. All right, we are here and we are chatting with Jacob Kohut. And Jacob, it's so awesome to have you on the podcast. Super excited to learn more about you, to dive into your story. But before we get too far into anything, how are you feeling right now, man?
I'm feeling amazing. I'm very happy to be here. And I think it has more to do with the weather. It's just hit 60 and 70 degrees here in Northern Virginia. So more than anything about what I do during the day, it's all about that weather. It's good.
I love good weather. It just totally changed your demeanor. I'm so glad you're here as well. And I know that Jeff gave you a little introduction earlier, but I would love to get into having our listeners really understand kind of how you describe yourself, kind of answering that age-old question of, hey, Jake, what do you do? Would you mind sharing a little bit?
Yeah, I think I'm most comfortable tipping it off with I consider myself to have a portfolio career. A lot of teachers don't just teach, and they do other things that include volunteer work, but also some other jobs that they're passionate about. And so I consider myself to, be a band teacher in Fairfax County, Virginia. And I'm also a bandsman in the DC National Guard, both of which I've been in for 11 years. And then I'm also a private music teacher for bassoon and saxophone, and I'm a composer. So those are the big things that I do. And recently I've done a lot of guest speaking. So I'm actually lining up a lot of conferences and stuff like that. So it's a really exciting time for me.
So I gotta ask Jake, are these guest speaking and conferences stuff, is that coming from the news stories that were featuring you?
It started that way, but it's actually kind of pivoted into some stuff that I was actually starting beforehand, and it's just kind of helped launch it. So good timing. Yeah. So
I want to get into that, what you were getting in beforehand, but I want to mention anybody who's listening maybe that isn't familiar with Jacob. So there's a lot of stories written and featured because you were part of the group of National Guard that was up at the Capitol, protecting the Capitol, and there was a couple shots of you in the back of, I think it was a Humvee, or back of a vehicle.
Yep.
Was it a Humvee? Okay, on Zoom with your class. Yeah. And for me, that's actually, I reached out, I'm like, you got to come talk to us, because for me, I was going, okay, you're up there doing your duty, serving our country. Everyone should be thanking you for that, and would be perfectly fine if you didn't do class for a few days, but you still did. And so I was curious, what drove you to do that? Where you're like, you know what? I know I'm here. I've got this job, this role that I'm doing. I've got permission, but I've got to connect. I've got to go in. What is going through your head there where you're like, I got to get on Zoom real quick, guys. Well, and I got to do my class.
What's going through my head right now is the funny story about the Zoom thing is that Fairfax didn't allow Zoom to be used as the platform, but a lot of news articles just deferred to Zoom because it's the one that we know. And actually Zoom reached out to me, and I thought it was just like a low-level employee just reaching out to me. And I looked her up, and it turned out to be like the COO of Zoom personally emailed me and gave me some brand name stuff. And I was I feel bad. I asked like, hey, actually, this is a misunderstanding. Do you want me to send this stuff back? And she's just, nah, just keep it. But we actually use a lot of Google Meet and Blackboard Collaborate.
So you were on Meet, but everyone just assumed you were on Zoom.
Yes. We were doing Meet. We do a hybrid of Meet and Blackboard Collaborate because I actually teach at 2 schools. But it's kind of complicated. Like I think at first, we didn't know how long we were going to be there. I mean, like our first days, it was like an 18-hour shift, freezing cold. I mean, I'm from Michigan. I know how to dress for the weather, but after, like 10 hours, that starts to kind of like seep in, and I needed to up my game more. But, it was kind of like I didn't do anything those first 2 days of class. And actually the now famous photo of me down at the Capitol with my mask all crooked because the ones they gave us were really cheap. But that was one that I took a selfie to send it to my principal to say, hey, I'm not coming in, or I'm not going to be doing my class today because, hey, here I am. This happened. Mm-hmm. And, she's totally understands. She's very cool. But it was after a couple of days of realizing, whoa, we're not really going home. We're going to be here for a while. We didn't know. And that was when I was like, I got to figure this class stuff out because, all teachers want great subs, right? Can we just agree that if you're not in class, you're thinking about your class?
Absolutely.
And unless you have the world's best sub in there. And now for music, it might be a bit different. I don't know about you all, but for music, when we're out, we have like a secret list of people that are just like the all-stars of retired band directors that we got to go to get them in the classroom. Because sometimes when I'm not in there, my favorite person to go to is Susan Deck. So, when I'm not there, but Susan Deck is there, I'm thinking the kids are getting a world-class education. But in this COVID environment, we just don't have those all-star legendary teachers available. And in fact, I wasn't sure just if anybody would be available. So I was like, okay, well, now it's down to either nobody or somebody that I don't really know. And I'm thinking like it's recruitment season for next year. The kids are signing up for middle school. How are we going to convince them that this is awesome? Because I don't know how long am I going to be down at the Capitol? So I talked to my principal and I was like, hey, what if I made this schedule work? I talked to my team leader with the National Guard. I was like, hey, what if I made this work? And I just kind of laid out a schedule to try to say, I'm not going to be able to be at all the classes, but here's some that I can be at with that work. And both sides were very understanding about it, and we made it work. And, it was extremely tiring. I cannot tell you how exhausting it was in moments, but definitely worth it to see the look on their faces saying, hey, yeah, we're doing this. So
I love it. So I do want to touch on, just because you piqued my interest there when you said that, getting some different speaking gigs and conferences, stuff like that, stuff you were working on beforehand. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah.
So what are the things you're going and talking about and sharing?
Yeah. So, with community engagement and classroom engagement, those are huge in my things. And those are two different things. But, like I teach currently at the middle school and elementary school. The elementary kids go to the middle school. And it then feeds the high school that's all on the same campus. So it's kind of a close community, even though we're in this huge area. And I'm big into that, just that community aspect of things. And then when it comes to classroom engagement, I'm huge into how engaged are the kids in the classroom. So, I have a doctorate that's in music composition, but I like to team up with a friend of mine who has her PhD in music education, Angela Ammerman, Dr. Angela Ammerman, to do publications and propose clinics and conferences and stuff like that on those topics. And so that's what we've been planning on for conferences and articles. But with the speaking engagements, it's actually, a friend was like, well, why don't you speak on how you balance all this stuff? And so I've got this clinic kind of thing, talk about I call it the professional balancing act, just how to balance all the stuff that I do and some strategies that I use and have figured out the hard way to figure out how to do all this stuff. Because as teachers and musicians, we usually wind up wearing a lot of hats. I don't know a single teacher who doesn't consider themselves having to wear a lot of hats. And in order to do that well, you have to have a strategy behind it all. And so that's what I've been speaking on a lot lately. And it's just been so gratifying to pay it forward, because I'm speaking primarily to music education students.
When I think we all know I have to ask you to give us at least one of those strategies.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to dive into the one that you might not think a lot about, and that is the health one. Right in the middle of the presentation, I dive into self-care, and I break that down into 4 categories. I do sleep, eating, exercise, and just that last one of relationships, and making sure that you have healthy relationships in your life, social, emotional support, and all that stuff. But the one that I would pick out of all those would be sleep. Life-changing. Get 8+ hours of sleep if possible, and strategize your sleep game around everything, like from what's going on, like light in your bedroom, noise in your bedroom, if possible, what you eat, when you consume caffeine, and then just having that propel you through the day because you got a good night's sleep. How amazing is that? When's the last time you had a great night's sleep and you felt great throughout the day? You just get to do more when that happens. Now, the ironic thing about me saying all that stuff was I was down at the Capitol for a lot longer than you may have thought, and my sleep got really messed up again, the circadian rhythms and everything like that. But I'm getting back there.
I love it. So focus on sleep. I can attest to that. And that's one that I struggled, I think, the most with. But when if I can get into my rhythm of sleep, and I do, you get so much more done. You feel just better, just all around. And I find I'm more likely to work out, and I'm more likely to eat healthy if I just feel better right when I wake up. So that's awesome. I love it. I want to dive in. I'm really excited to hear your story here. So I'm hoping you can share a story with us about a time that you've had a failure, a challenge you had to overcome. Kind of take us there with you. What happened? How did you overcome that? And then what did you take away from that experience?
Man, I've got so many failures that I could share, but I'm still, we're at different points in all these success stories about coming back from those failures. So I'm going to dive way back into high school and talk about the time I was on the swim team. Even though, I'm in the military, I'm athletic, I would not consider myself an all-around great athlete. And when I was in 11th grade, I joined the swim team, and that's kind of late to join a high school sport. And also at that point, I was really good at a lot of other things. So in my life, in my mind, in my, teenage years, I was like, I am amazing at these things. And then I joined the swim team, and I was terrible at swimming, but I stuck with it. And, I got some personal best, and it really taught me a lot about humility, because it was one of the first things that I was doing that I was just absolutely not the best person on the team, quite far from it. And, I did it again senior year. I was definitely still in that bottom end, but it was actually really rewarding, because it was like, okay, I can still participate in something and not be the best at it. And then right after those 2 years I was on the swim team, I picked up the bassoon, which, I was a saxophone player before. I picked up the bassoon. I was absolutely terrible at it, but I kept thinking, I was horrible at swimming, but I got better at it, and maybe I wasn't the best person on the team, but I was definitely a lot better than when I first started with it. And, after 4 years of learning the bassoon, by the senior year, I was one of the best players in the orchestra, and I've just always had that mindset from there. So I kind of goes all the way back to that swimming experience, where I finally just got okay with not being the best, but being okay with challenging myself personally and moving on and getting better within that,
I love that. Like growth mindset. That's teach better mindset right there. A little bit better today than you were yesterday. A little bit better tomorrow than you were today. Like gold right there. I love that. So when it comes to all the things you're doing, because I just feel like I've sat back in this episode and just tried to soak every story in. I think you've accomplished so much. I think you are going to accomplish so much as you continue forward. I have to know, like, question 4 always asks, what is keeping you excited about education and the work you do? And with this question, I really want to know, like, what fuels your fire and keeping you, like, moving forward through all the work that you're doing?
Well, I think I could answer this one personally, but I'd like to think more broadly about this one. I was just reading an article in the Washington Post today, and I still get the physical print subscription. I'm one of those guys, but I couldn't help but think, like, it really it resonated with me about the virtual learning landscape. And that is a positive, exciting atmosphere of how is this going to impact how we go back to learning? So what are we going to learn from this year about what worked, those silver lining successes from the pandemic? And when we go back in person, we're still going to have all those learning lessons. You couldn't have made a better experiment on this massive level of what works for technology if we have to include this. And now we're combining this in the next year with what we already have been working on for decades. You know, there's like this new excitement in my mind about potentially being able to get closer to closing the achievement gap. You know, that's what I'm thinking about with this. So, I mean, that hasn't been, nobody's really openly connected the dots, but that's what I'm thinking. You know, we've got that potential. We've got billions of dollars being thrown into catching kids up. Well, now we can just keep going, you know.
I love that mentality. No, and that is not only a mentality that I hope every educator carries, but what I really resonate with is the hope and the excitement behind that. I think that's really, really engaging. When it comes to a piece of advice that you want to offer teachers, and I can only imagine you probably have so many to choose from, but if you had to pick one specific piece of advice that you want to offer teachers, what would that be?
Yeah, again, I want to go big on the answer to this question. I sit back in a lot of meetings and I think, okay, we're tackling these issues with strategies that are great. Teachers are some of the best people on the planet, and they are fixing problems that they didn't create, right? And we're putting tons of energy into it, and that's great. I think we need to also match that energy with advocacy for asking the questions, what's causing the problems that we're here fixing? And the big one in my mind always goes back to income inequality and that whole stuff that we're getting kids who are coming to school that are just behind. It's not our fault, not their fault. Whose fault is it? You know, there's a lot of answers to that question, but if we actively worked as hard as we do in person behind the scenes to prevent that from happening again, imagine if every teacher in the country who has had to struggle in the classroom to deal with the effects of that, imagine if we all stepped up together to address and advocate for preventing that from happening in the future. Imagine how effective and powerful that would be. So that's my advice. We need to get together and solve the root of the problems.
I love it. And so true. We've got to figure out. I love that you say the teachers are working so hard to solve problems that they didn't create, because that's so true. And now it's how do we come together? How do we figure out where do these problems are coming from, and how do we start attacking the problems at the root, at the cause? I love it. All right, we're gonna put you to the test now, Sergeant.
Okay.
I'm gonna throw the next 6 questions at you. Your goal is to answer each one in 15 seconds or less. You ready?
I think so.
All right. What is one EdTech tool you cannot live without?
I love Google Classroom. It's just very intuitive.
Give us a book you're reading right now.
Bach, Beethoven, and the Boys by David Barber.
Who do we need to follow on Twitter or Instagram today?
I'm not actually on those platforms much. I'm more of a Facebook guy.
On Facebook, is it purely like personal? Do you like jump into like groups? Is that where you go into?
Yeah, so we've got a big there's tons of groups, Virginia, gotcha. Music educators and stuff like that. But I also follow a lot of classical musicians just to see what they're doing at the 30,000 foot level and see kind of how that trickles down to my classroom.
Very cool.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, totally get it. I like it. Give us a good YouTube channel, website, or podcast educators should check out.
Okay, so this is going to be very specific to music, but I like the Entrepreneurial Musician, that's so hard to say, with Andrew Hitz for musicians. And then because we're doing so much of the tech stuff, Nick Nimmin on YouTube is an amazing YouTube content creator. It's just great for anybody who's trying to build their own channel. That was way more than 15 seconds, but
that's all right. Give us a daily, weekly, or monthly routine every teacher should get into.
You got to get more sleep, but you also got to prioritize research and development first thing in the morning. I do the Stephen Covey priority square.
All right, and give us the best piece of advice you've ever received.
You got to build flex time into your schedule. Things are going to take longer than you think.
Oh, I love it. I want to go back because I love. Can you give us the 60-second summary of Stephen Covey priority square? Is that
actually,
it's
funny. I got that from the Andrew Hitz podcast, the Entrepreneurial Musician. But yeah, it's obviously a thing. Important or non-important, urgent, non-urgent, and so those are two variables, and then they combine for a box of 2x2. So there's 4. You've got urgent and important. Those are the things like they've got a deadline and they're going to have an impact. Things that are just important but aren't urgent, but they might become urgent if you don't do those things right now. There are non-urgent, non-important things such as like phone calls that are distracting you, emails that you don't need to answer, Facebook that you don't need to go on. And then there's like the 4th one that would be things you enjoy, like reading the newspaper for me. So I just do that. I've got a notebook that I write. I'm a big writer. And I just draw the square at least once a week and just say, where are my priorities right now to make sure I kick the day off with the most important thing.
Love it. Appreciate that.
That was really good. That is definitely trophy worthy there, Jeff Gargas.
Absolutely. Yes.
Love it. Teach Better trophy coming your way.
Nice.
Make sure you pay attention in the mail. Jeff's going to send it. It's a huge box full of, those like squishy peanut stuff.
Yep.
It's going to be great.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll put it in my window.
You kind of took that up a notch. Like we never used to do the peanuts. Now we're doing the peanuts.
Well, yeah, we're doing the peanuts, the squishy peanuts that like when you open the box, they go all over the room and you can't clean them up.
That's everything. Yeah.
That seems to fit the Teach Better Talk podcast. Sure. I feel like when you open the trophy, it should like explode all over the room.
All right. Sounds good.
Well, I want to make sure that our listeners can stay connected with you. So would you mind, how can everyone continue to not only connect with you, but also the content that you continue to share out as well?
Yeah, so everything that I do lives on my website, which is jacobkohutmusic.com. I do video editing. I'm a composer. My compositions go there. I'm a performer. 257th Army Band is something that that's what I'm in. But also for Facebook, it's just my name, Jacob Kohut. But yeah, the YouTube channel, Jacob Kohut, or the 257th Army Band has a lot of performances that I've done and arrangements that I've done, because we barely talked about the fact that I'm a musician too. And I don't know if you saw the bassoon in the background. We don't have the video up, but I do play stuff.
I did not catch the bassoon. There may be a whole other episode where we just talk
Where's
music.
Waldo, Jim? Yeah.
Well, yeah, we may have to do another episode where we just talk music. That could be a good time. But listening, you can find all the links and resources and everything we mentioned in this episode over at teachbetter.com, as well as the really important links for connecting with Jake and keeping this conversation going. So head over to teachbetter.com for all of that. Be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And if you can give us a rating and review, really appreciate that as well. And let's keep taking this one step further. Think of just 3 of your colleagues who need to hear these amazing stories and connect with the amazing educators, and just share this podcast with them. Jake, this was awesome, man. I really appreciate you taking the time, hanging out with us, sharing your story. Truly, truly grateful and appreciate you serving our country and the sacrifice you make there. And just appreciate you taking the time today, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And until next time, let's get out there. Let's teach better.